I'm your host, Laura Womack, and with me is our producer, as ever, Jen McHugh.
Hello, everyone.
Today, we're expanding our topics out to another branch of the arts, drama. Phillips Mill has been producing theatrics since its founding 92 years ago. It's as much a part of our history as the visual arts. We're excited about a program started by our chair of drama, Valerie Eastburn. 3 years ago, she and her drama team started our Emerging Playwrights Competition to offer our community more than another production of My Fair Lady, as much as we all love that play. And the Emerging Playwrights Competition has proven to be very popular with both audiences and playwrights. The winners' works will have a live reading at the Mill, which is a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that. Normally it's in the fall. However, so we could hold the event live at the Mill, it's been rescheduled for June 12th. So we're looking forward to that. Today we have two of our playwright winners joining us on ArtTalk. They'll be reading their works. We'll have their works read in June. They get to enjoy it. Kimberly Kalaja has taught literature at Princeton University and New York University, as well as in Albania on a Fulbright fellowship. She left all of that to write full-time. She's working on producing her second film, The Lesson, which has won several screenplay awards. Nick DeSimone is an actor, writer, and filmmaker. He produced his play, I Love You, in South Korea, and his film, Two Boroughs, won an LA Film Award. He's just wrapped Full Throttle Paradise, a short film set in New York City. Thank you all for attending, and we welcome your comments and questions. Please type them in the question and answer field, and we'll try to work your contributions in topically as we go along. And we will try to get everyone's questions in by the hour. Kimberly and Nick, welcome. Nice to have you here.
It's nice to be here. Thank you.
All right, we're going to get to know each of you individually a little bit first, and then we'll have a general discussion. Feel free, each of you, to join in the conversation as we go along. We'll explore. We're going to start with Nick first, but Kimberly, if you've got something to add, please join us. Okay, Nick, I was reading your play for the Emerging Playwrights Competition, Close Your Eyes. It's a one-act play, of course. All the entries are short plays. And I just want to say there's a lot of pathos for 14 pages. Is it difficult to write short?
It depends. It depends on the subject matter. I like to write in a short format. You know, I don't find it difficult to fit a lot into a short format. I think it's important to be able to write good scenes in larger pieces, and the best way to get good at that is to keep writing and including short plays.
Okay, great.
To get rid of all the fat, you know.
Right. So it's, I mean, and even at 14 pages, I mean, the dialogue is very tight. 14 pages may sound like a lot, but it's not when you have a very tight dialogue.
I tend to write sparse dialogue, or I should say, my first draft. There's a lot of dialogue, and then I just, I get rid of a lot. I rewrite a lot, and my dialogue gets less and less. I think it's important to keep the action going, keep the tension up.
Right. So you're writing, your two characters in this are women. Do you, I'm assuming that that's fairly unusual, although maybe less so these days, for a male playwright to be writing from the perspective of women. And I gather that there is a version that is male. Is that right? Are they?
Yes.
What's the difference? Talk to us a little bit about that.
It started, the first version I started, it was this version. It was the female version, and it was performed a few times with it was done twice in New York, Marsha Halfrecht, Stella Pulo, and Julie Hayes. Then I thought, wouldn't it be fun to have a male version? How would that be? So I didn't just change the names and sexes. I had to change other things too, because it wasn't easily translatable to, okay, all of a sudden, you know, I had to rewrite the play and keep it in the same template, but there were things that changed. As far as writing for women, yeah, I tend to do that a lot, and people say, "Oh, that's interesting that you could write for women," but I don't even think about it. I know a lot of women. I grew up with a lot of women, and I just yeah, I don't. It's not a thing for me. You know,
I think it's
I
becoming less.
enjoy it.
Yeah, I think it's becoming less of a
Yeah.
thing generally, which is nice. So where do you come up with your ideas, your inspirations for your topics? I think that,
Basically, pardon me.
I was going to say, sorry, I was just going to add that I suspect that it comes very close from home. It seems like you're writing about a group of people that you know very well.
Yeah, you know, I, 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 I write about my life. A lot of the characters are based on me in various forms, based on my family, based on my friends. Lots of times they're masked, and lots of times I combine characters. So it's just stuff that I observe in life, stuff that happens to me. I walk around with a book, with an idea book. If something strikes me, I always write it down, whether it's a line or a title or a story or a plot or whatever. I write it down, and I tend to wind up writing the idea that moves me the most, the one that I say to myself, which of these ideas at the end of the week can I do a good job with? And I tend to pick that one. What do I know about? I tend to write about stuff that I know about, stuff that's in my life. Um, I travel a lot, so I tend to, I have a couple of plays that take place in Italy, Rome and Florence. So that seeped into my writing because I know about those cities, and I met various characters, and that's it. Yeah.
You seem to have the works that you shared with me before we met tonight are seem to be a group of Italian Americans in New York City. You show a lot of affection for your characters, and the film you just wrapped, Full Throttle Paradise, is sort of a humorous, quirky take on uh, this demographic.
Yeah, it's brand new. I finished it a couple days ago. You were one of the first to see it.
Thank you very
Um,
much.
you're quite welcome. I've shared it with a handful of select friends and colleagues, and it's been getting some good response. I'm really happy. It's a wacky little film, and I got great actors. I got Robert Finaro from The Sopranos, and veteran actor Bill Whedon, and Karen Giordano, who's amazing. CJ Galfand, a wonderful character actress, and Jason Furlani from the Actor Studio. So, and they really, really came through in a big way. They really knock it out of the park, and I'm very happy with how the film came out.
So as an
It was hard to
actor,
do it during.
sorry.
I started it before the pandemic, but post-production was during the pandemic, and that wasn't that fun. So it took a little bit longer than I had expected
It's a
because of
charming
the
film, and
pandemic.
I was definitely struck by the quality of your cast. And as an actor, I wanted to ask you about that. In your other film, Two Boroughs, it's a very touching film, and
Yeah.
those actors in that film just feel so confident in the small details of those characters. How do you work with your actors to get that? I mean, they took their time, and in the little things, because it's a very simple story, so much was expressed.
Simplicity of it. I think the important thing is to, number one, cast the right actors. You have to be meticulous about casting, and I always try to do that. With the first film, Two Boroughs, I got people that I got actors that were from that ilk, were from that Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island universe. The actor who played the old man who's sitting in the yard, who's eating the orange, well, that's my real life grandfather, who at the time was 102 years old. And the film was based on an experience that he had with his own son. So the film means a lot to me. And because of his estrangement with his son in real life, I mailed a copy of the film to my uncle, his son, and it inspired his son to go visit him in real life. So that was a special thing in my family. But my grandfather is not an actor. He was just, I just wanted him in my film. And he died 2 years later, but he had a reconciliation with his son before he died. So that made it all worthwhile.
I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, that it really shows how personal that film is. We have a question from the attendees, and I was going to ask you this. Is there a way, I was fortunate enough to see your two films. Is there a way that people who are attending here can get access to those films?
Yes, just, contact me. I could send you the YouTube links.
Okay,
It's
great.
very easy.
And there's, we'll put your website up so that people, I think your contact information is on your website. Is that right, Nick? Nick, yeah. Okay, very good.
Absolutely. Anybody is welcome to contact me, and I'll send them whatever.
Okay, great.
I'll
And
send them
then
the links.
we'll all be attending the reading of we'll all be able to attend the reading of your short play for Phillips Mill on June 12th.
Great.
Kimberly.
I really look forward to that.
Yeah, we do too. We do too. Kimberly, I really want to know how you came up with the concept for your play for the Emerging Playwrights Competition, Acts Without Words. You've got a twist in it that's pretty wicked. I hope that's not saying too much.
I don't think so. Is it okay to describe it? It's
Yeah,
without dialogue.
yes. I think it's okay. In fact, I think that's an intriguing aspect of it. It's without dialogue.
Yes.
And we don't give it away, obviously, but yeah. So how did you come up with that concept, Kimberly?
Well, the concept, I mean, I think in this case, it has a strange origin a little bit. I haven't had nearly as much experience really as Nick has in the theater. And I think one of the things that surprised me when I first started working with actors and directors was that if my assumptions are correct based on what I've heard, there's a certain sort of unofficial, an unwritten rule that readers of the theater bring, which is you don't have to follow the stage directions. And a couple of times this has been a huge source of frustration for me because I, like Nick, I know we talked about this earlier, I don't really waste a lot of time. I don't like a lot of props. I like to keep the dialogue minimal. I like to keep it punchy. So if I put it there, I feel like it matters. And my initial inspiration was, can I write a play where they have to follow the stage directions? And it just got tighter and tighter until in fact there was no dialogue. And now if they don't follow the stage directions, in fact, there won't be a play. So that's how I came up with the concept of it. It was actually one of three. I ended up writing 3 plays without dialogue that was originally sort of a triptych. And then this is the first of those 3 plays. And then the subject matter itself, I don't know where it comes from. You know, I don't know. I see stuff, I have an idea. I'm very influenced, as you might have guessed from the title, by Beckett and, you know, bleak environments and empty stages appeal to me. So it was really started as an experiment, and then I liked it.
Okay. Jen, we have some attendees are writing into the chat. What have they got to say?
It looks like we had some technical difficulty, but they're okay now. So.
Okay, I think that's it. We also have John Augustine, who's part of our drama group here and a very experienced person in the drama world and the theater world. He will be involved. He's involved with the Emerging Playwrights Competition, and he will be involved with that reading. And I've already talked with Valerie Eastburn, who is the chair of drama, about how they're going to do your reading, Kimberly. So we've got some emojis coming from John Augustine. So you've successfully challenged them.
That's good. But I wanted to go back to something Nick said that I thought was really interesting, that he did a version of his play that was 2 men and then a version of his play that was 2 women. I do this too when I'm drafting. I never thought of actually going all the way with it. I typically settle on one, but I love changing the gender of the character just to see how much you have to change in the writing, to see if you're really on the mark with the personality that would be right for a person. And sometimes for me, I find I don't have to actually do a lot of changing when I change from male to female. I don't know if that's because of the nature of the subject matter that I'm dealing with, but I was really interested in what Nick said, how he had to almost rewrite the play. That sounds like, 1, a lot of work, and 2, like I want to see both plays side by side in a way. You know.
Kimberly, I was thinking about the challenge that you've thrown to the director, and really the challenge you've thrown to the actor is great. But I think with reading it anyway, I thought it was so interesting that if your 2 characters, Marcy, who's really your primary character, the fact that she's not saying anything, I think in a way you challenge the reader, the audience, to really be drawn in. And I feel like I understand her quite a bit, even though she doesn't say anything. Whereas Marco has, he's gesturing and he's trying to communicate with Marcy. And yet he is the much less, even though he is actively communicating, in many ways, he's the much less interesting character. And we don't really spend much time thinking about him as a person. Yeah.
It's definitely Marcy's play. And I mean, I really just wanted to explore that idea of maybe a sort of tribute to the passive aggressive identity, the less that not making a choice, not doing much, is in fact making important choices and doing a lot. And that sometimes it's just to challenge that notion of what we view as active, what we view as passive, and who really has control over a situation when there's such an important dynamic relationship, and if there is a relationship, right? I mean, with that, especially without dialogue, I think that it is a challenge for actors, and I hope it will work on stage, because I feel like so much is grounded in facial expression and movement. This isn't particularly well suited to a huge theater, right? This is small theater. Intimate setting where you can really see the actors kind of stuff.
And I think we've got a question for Kimberly.
Yes, William McCormack was wondering how, Kimberly, your academic work influences your playwriting. And can you elaborate on that?
Oh, thank you, Will. I think, I think that in some ways it inhibits me only when I first want to start writing. I have a lot of ideas, but the discipline of actually sitting down and writing, I think, can be overwhelming. Sometimes I have to forget all the things I've read, because if you live in the shadow of Shaw or Beckett, you're not really going to sit down and write. So while on the one hand, I think it's wonderful that I have a sense of all the different things that have been done, even with Acts Without Words, I know that it's not the first of its kind. It's not unprecedented. There have been silent plays before. So I think that what it lends me maybe is sort of a huge smorgasbord of ideas that I can choose from, how to do things. I have a sense that there's no subject matter that's off limits. I would never shy away from empathy. I know that as a writer, we're always encouraged to write what we know and write what's close to us. But I think one of the things that my academic studies has lent me is a curiosity about things I know very little about, and a sort of almost stupid courage to go out and try to imagine them. For example, I had a play a few years ago that was set in a prison camp, and it was all male, an all male cast. And it was kind of scary at first to think that I just wondered what people would say about it. But, you know, in the long run, I think writing, as like reading, is mostly about discovering people that you don't know and getting in there and figuring out what makes people tick. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And it's also, I'm glad to hear you say that, because, you know, I was going to ask you also about your inspiration, and Nick is writing very affectionately about people who are close around him. And, you know, given, you know, Acts Without Words, and also you have a new screenplay out, The Lessons, that you're looking to produce. And this is also, you know, has a bit of a dark message. Both of them, you know, are, I would say, women with power issues. And yes, if you could talk a little bit about that inspiration you're writing about.
Sure. The Lesson is based on, it's a film based on a play called The Shooter that I wrote. And that one actually has a much more personal sort of source, in that I know a lot of people around me. I've been blessed with a huge diversity of people around me, and many of whom do not share my belief systems or my ideas, but are still very close to me and people I care about. And I think getting into the mind of a shooter was something that was important to me. And I also really, really wanted to write a play where I could get somebody like my dad into the theater to watch a play or a film that deals with a subject that would normally make him so defensive he'd be closed to the argument. And though I know that these days it's kind of important to take a side, and I think that that's one of the things that I tend to refuse to do, is just explore, just question. I mean, I have heroes and villains and things, but sometimes they can get a little ambiguous. And I do think that sometimes getting into the mind of somebody you don't understand and trying to bridge a gap without taking a side, just saying, what would make somebody buy a gun? What would make somebody shoot a gun? For me, that is the end in itself, rather than, I think we have enough people on both sides of, say, the gun debate, and there's been enough written and enough done to make real statements. So my statement was really an exploration of, can you understand why someone would do this or that, or reject this or that, and still get along, right? That was the, so I would say that that's actually one of the most personal things I've ever written, though my dad has not come to see it.
I think there's a lot of content there that's interesting, and I think now is a time when we actually need to understand what's in people's heads, not just argue about the issues, because we've certainly done quite a bit of that, and this is obviously an important topic. I know you're looking for a producer for the film, Kimberly. This is a really rough time. You've made the transition from academia to production, and Nick has been in the full, you know, he's been going, and I think he's even got another film that he's starting up as he's getting this one out before the film festivals. So in a time of COVID, and when you haven't already been in the stream of it, how do you go about getting something like this produced?
Well, I'm not going to lie. This has been a rough year. In that, especially, I think any writer out there will understand that you are often writing into a void. Getting an audience is a really hard thing. And with The Lesson, I had an enormously good year. It's won 4 Best Screenplay awards in screenplay competitions. I was invited to take part in 6 festivals. And really, the year you want to go to the festival is the year where you've placed in your category, and all of those were canceled. And The Shooter, the play it was based on, was going to open in the UK, and that production was shut down due to COVID. And so there's a certain, I don't know what to say. Like, I hope I'm ever this fortunate again to have the opportunities, but it is a little scary. I know Nick is much more proactive, and he's just much more experienced in filmmaking. So I'll pick his brain in June and how he gets stuff done.
A little networking there. We're going to turn in a minute to the discussion with both of you about some broader topics, but I think we've got a question before we do so for Kimberly. Jen?
Yes, we actually have 2. One is, I know from seeing 2 different performances of The Shooter, casting characters with actors of different races had a big impact on how the play is experienced. Will Acts Without Words have similar dynamic that the casting will impact how audiences experience the play?
Interesting.
Yes, maybe even more so. Another one of my sort of quirks as a writer is I don't like to be super definitive in race or age of my characters, which I know can frustrate directors, but the way I've described these characters are a man in the prime of his life and a woman in the prime of her life. And I think that this will this will be the first interpretive act of any director that casts, and it will be a huge difference. The play will be a completely different play, for example, if it's 20 or 30-year-olds versus if it's 40 or 50 or 60-year-olds. So I think I'm hoping to see it done a lot of different ways. Thank you for the question and for coming to 2 productions of The Shooter. But yes, I think it will really impact it, though. This time, I think race will be a little less significant, whereas in The Shooter, that was a huge issue. But I think it'll be age this time. I hope everybody will experiment with ageism in casting.
All right, Jen, let's go through that second question, and then we'll move forward.
Okay, this is from Anne Marie. I have a question for Kimberly. In a play without dialogue, it comes down to nonverbal communication for the actor to work with. To what extent has Kimberly written in cues for nonverbal communications for the actors in her stage directions?
I think it's almost all cues. It's movement. It's movement based. I would never tell an actor smile, or look sad, but I would tell an actor what a character is feeling, because I really do feel that for me, that's really the fun job of watching actors work. In some ways, I feel like all my stage directions are very controlling, but in a strange way, they leave a lot of space for interpretation. That's my goal. I hope this is answering the question. But I do write very clear indicators for what's going through somebody's head, or I will write exactly how they're moving and what they're doing, and leave it up to the actor painfully to fill in those blanks.
Thank you, Kimberly. So you both are writing for theater as well as film. Is there, other than the mechanics of that, is there a different approach that you take for that? Let's start with you, Nick.
Yeah, for me, when I write a play, knowing that I have to put it on the stage, it puts me into the mode of something that's more dialogue driven. Um, a play and a film are two different things. With a film, I start thinking about images. I start thinking about bridges, and we could get a shot from the roof, and that could open the film. And so fade into Christopher Street, the Lucille Lorcel Theater, and then next shot, the main character walks around the corner. So I tend to think in those ways. With a play, it's just constant tension and a constant, what do these characters want from each other? So for me, it is two different things. It puts me in two different heads.
Yeah. Play is constant tension. That's interesting. What do you think, Kimberly?
Yeah, having turned one play of mine into a film, they're really different. He's absolutely right in that I think the limitation / constraint, which isn't a limitation, I should say the constraint of the stage is that you can't move around all the time. Like the great freedom of film is switching scenes. You can really be anywhere without a transition, whereas the space of a stage moves differently. And so keeping the tension and the dynamic is very different. Though I would say one of the things I do in the theater, which may or may not impact how often I'm produced, is I do still think very visually. If I wanted, as people will see if they come to see Acts Without Words, obviously I'm happy working with visual images, and I consider the way the set works, what's there and also what's not there, to be really important visual indicators. But we were both raised in the era of film, right? Like it's hard not to be visual. It's hard not to think about symbolism and all that, even on a stage.
Right.
Though you definitely have more freedom in a film.
Yeah, but it's amazing what could be done with lights and sound on the stage. It's amazing, lots can be done. But how do you think about a movie like On the Waterfront, I think there were a couple of play versions of that I have never seen, but that's a film. That's, it's the Hoboken docks and the smoke coming from the smokestacks and the longshoremen, and I'm sure there could be an interesting stage play of that, but that's a film. Mm-hmm. The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3 is a film. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The French Connection is a film. It's images juxtaposed with each other. Some work could be both.
Yeah, out of curiosity, Nick, when you sit down with an idea, do you know immediately if it's a film or a play or a story or something else? Or do you think of it that way? Or do you start writing and think, oh no, this belongs here. This isn't a play, this is a film?
That's a good question. Most of the time I know, but sometimes I don't know, and sometimes I think I know, and I say I was wrong. I thought this was a play, but now I want these characters to go, in the subway, it turns into another animal, or if it's a film, I say, you know what? I think this is more. I think this takes place in a living room. I think this is more of a theater piece. So, but most of the time I do know. Most of the time I do know. Like, for example, when I carry around my idea book, I usually write idea for a play, blah, 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 idea for a film, da, 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 da. Idea for a line in a film, idea for, or a scene in a play or scene in a film. So I tend to do it. I tend to know, but it's not always the case. But that's a good question. What about you?
I feel like I don't know. I feel like I have a vague sense of, I'll get a scene in my head or a storyline or a character in my head, and then usually within a few a few days or weeks of writing, I know exactly what it is. But with Acts Without Words,
Okay.
I wasn't sure at all. But then I have a play, the one I talked about earlier, Night Moths on the Wing, that's all male and in a prison. It's definitely not a film. It's a play.
Right. Yeah.
Kimberly, you the other day you quoted Edward Albee. I thought it was such a great quote. He said that, and I hadn't heard this before, that the important relationship is between the writer and the audience. We're talking about plays here now.
Mm.
I wonder if you could expand on that a little bit, especially in light of this particular discussion.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he said, Albee says somewhere that plays don't need to be performed, that the relationship is between the playwright and the reader, and that the performance is the icing on the cake. And I know that this is kind of not why we do theater, right? Like if you want to write a short story or just have a reader, there are other genres. But what I think is important about that is how he privileges the story and the text, and how he thinks that different interpretations, much like the way a reader has an interpretation of a different text than, say, another reader, but that's something I love about plays. I may be going off and putting, these aren't Albee's words now, but what I think he's trying to get at is that the text is always the thing, the text is always stable, and it's so important for us as readers to be sort of humble before the text and try to figure out what the writer is saying. And what's lovely about the theater is actors and directors are there to help us, because some things are just really hard to imagine. But what I love about people who come to the theater, in particular audiences of the theater, is that they're very specially trained readers, and that if you read plays, you've already been a director and a set designer, you've cast, you're acting all the roles. And I feel that there's a certain ownership of that that makes the play belong to the reader. And the more direct relationship I can have with an audience, the better I feel. So, I mean, as a playwright, one of the things that I dream of are directors and actors that sort of get me and are really helping my vision come. On the other hand, what I also love about plays is that they don't really belong to anyone. Film is so definitive. Once you make a film, that's the definitive version of the story. Whereas a play is, such a mobile, transient thing. It happens in space and time, and then it's over. And, as someone pointed out, if you change the race, if you change the age, if you change the actor, the whole play might seem very different. And that's lovely too. It doesn't really belong to anybody, but it's not quite as stable. I just personally want to be in that relationship with the reader, with the spectator, to feel like I'm having that dialogue, I'm having that communication,
Nick, you're holding a lot there.
Yeah.
Are you agreeing? I'm taking it as agreement. What do you think?
Yeah, and right, and that's the great thing about plays. Yes, you could read. I could pick up a book, a play. I could pick up Chekhov or I don't know, American Buffalo by David Mamet, and I could read it, and I could really enjoy it and get nourishment from it. And then I could experience that play in another way. I could go to the event version of it, where you see the thing come to life, not in your head, but on a stage. And the event part of it is what excites me, whether I'm a spectator or it's a production that I'm involved with. I that's what really turns me on. Is I tend to not like to be in my own plays. I like to watch them.
So you're an actor, a director, a filmmaker, a writer, Nick, in Hollywood, the Hollywood films, the writer is notoriously neglected. Here, Albee, great writer, is saying, that it's between the writer and the audience. what about as an actor? How do you feel about that?
With specific, I want to make sure I understand the question.
Yeah, as an actor, it sounds like Edward Albee is, saying it's very nice. It's the frosting, as Kimberly described it, to have the actors there on the stage. And you rightly point out that it's the experience of it as well. So as an actor, somebody who, in addition to all the other hats that you wear, how do you feel about this great playwright saying, the actor's not is the frosting? I'm going to put it that way.
Right. I think I have a sneaky suspicion that even though he said that, I think Edward Albee has an immense, had an immense respect for actors, and I'm sure that he also liked to see his work on the stage, and of course. So I don't think Albee's saying he's belittling the role of the actor. I don't think he's saying if it gets I don't care if my work, I don't care if plays get produced. I don't care if my plays or the other plays get on the stage. I think he was just making a point. That's what I think.
Fair enough.
Anyway.
Fair enough. So you produced your play "I Love You" in South Korea, and then so there the audience is coming from a different cultural background, coming from a different language. Although there's quite a lot of English taught and understood in South Korea. What was that like when the relationship is with the audience?
Yeah, it was a wonderful experience. I went last year. I was actually in this play. It's a three character play. It was me. It was Bill Wheaton, the actor that I mentioned before, who's also in Full Throttle Paradise as Cousin DeSimone, and it was Melissa Roth. The three of us went. It was directed by Amanda Maresco, and it was a great experience. The Korean was projected onto the screen, so we did it in English, but there were large letters on a screen so they could follow what's going on, and it was an amazing experience. We did it in 2 different cities, and it was just great.
Nice. Kimberly, you were.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, thank you very much. Kimberly, you were in Albania teaching literature, I believe, and you were talking about how their experience of literature ended in the Victorian age, and so what does that mean? How do I want to understand what you mean by that, and what is the significance of them not having read something more recent or extensively?
Right. Well, what I was trying to explain was my Fulbright was going over to speak with artists in different genres. I worked with painters. I was interviewing people. I even got to interview their national poet, their big guy, Ismail Kadare. And what's really striking is the effect that communism had on the way artists view themselves. I'm not even sure we could have a sort of a forum like this with Albanian writers. And what I just meant to say is modernism didn't really happen for them because of censorship and the way that they were so cut off from the rest of Europe and the world. That it didn't change. I mean, we don't really think about it when we're teaching or reading or writing in the West, but it's such a normal part of our experience as artists to talk about our work, and in a weird way that comes out of modernism, and also the way their imagination is shaped. I think we have a much broader sense of the horizons that we are allowed to sort of move towards. Things might seem very rigid. Now, it did open up in the 1990s, and they're sort of trying to catch up, but you don't really realize how a brain and an aesthetic and a whole cultural view is shaped by the things we read and the importance of the way stories are told and how it really affects who we are and how we interact with each other, until you meet people who come from a totally different perspective. Imagine never hearing of James Joyce or Virginia Woolf or F. Scott Fitzgerald. Like, it just never happened. And when you think also, we've had so much time, in our reading in our 20th century. Not only did we have modernism, which introduced psychoanalysis and stream of consciousness and all these crazy things that you're allowed to do as a writer. We even have postmodernism and post-structural. We're post now. And I just feel that it's very interesting to come at people and then suddenly realize you don't have the same vocabulary, you don't have the same experience, and how much the stories we tell each other, the things we see in the theater, the things we read in school, shape us in ways we might not even understand.
And and we had Columbo, and we had these great TV shows. I know that influenced my writing, and Taxi, and even great sitcoms, All in the Family, and this is some great writing on those shows. MASH, The Twilight Zone. It's great, and
Very good. Yeah. So I'd love to hear about how you each came to be part of the Emerging Playwrights Competition at Phillips Mill. Go ahead, Nick.
My friend Amy Wright somehow she sent me a heads up email saying you should submit to this. This is a friend of mine who has this company, and so she forwarded to me, and I thought, oh yeah, okay, I'll submit it. It seems like a great group, so I submitted, and then I forgot about it, and then I got the nice email, out of the blue, and I was thrilled, and I found out the good news.
Very good. Congratulations on that. Kimberly?
Thank you.
A former colleague of mine at Princeton, Charlotte Zanadakis, lives in New Hope. She's a big fan, I think a subscriber. She sent me information and said, you should really look into them. They're very interesting. And it's really thanks to her that I heard of you guys and submitted.
All right, very good. We've got Jim Field, who's thanking you both so much. He's a painter from this area, and he is learning about creativity from a different forum that he can use in drawing and painting. So there you go. Just exceptional. Very good.
Cool.
And
Thanks, Jim.
good. If anyone else has questions, please put them into the Q&A and we'll get on those. And so are you guys are, this summer, you'll be coming down to the Bucks County area, the Lambertville, New Jersey area. Have you spent any time in this area? We have sort of a long history of New York creatives, theater types coming down to this area, which we're so grateful for. It's really enriched our community.
That's what I hear. I visited a couple times. I have some friends in the area. My friend Joe Ferrara, who wrote the music for my film, he lives in Doylestown.
Doylestown.
Doylestown. So
yeah,
I ride a motorcycle, so I'm looking forward to riding down.
Yeah, we get a lot of motorcycles.
I hear there's some good riding area.
Yeah, this is big motorcycle territory, right up and down the river.
That's what I hear.
The river.
That's what I hear. So I'm really, really looking forward to riding down.
All right, very good. And Kimberly, have you been to this area?
No, I'm looking forward to discovering it, but I don't have a car, so I'm one of those people that knows just the spots right off the train. So I'm gonna really look forward to it, and my fingers are crossed that everything goes smoothly. With this was such a devastating year with COVID. there's a part of me that's just so fearful that something's going to go wrong. But I'm really hoping to see you guys in June.
Yeah, we are too. We're really
Absolutely.
looking forward to that. And we
Yeah.
hope that we get together with you again closer to that time. I think it's going to be exciting. We are planning our venue for the outdoors. So, and we're a beautiful old Bucks County stone mill is our venue, and it's right beside a creek. So it's really pretty environment. So we're looking forward to sharing that with you. And then-
Beautiful. That sounds great.
yeah, good. And we've got a comment from John Augustine. Jen, you want to share that?
Sure, John had to leave, but he said this was really great, informative, playful, wonderful webinar talk. He needs to bow out to go to his Zoom writer group. But
Yeah.
great job, and he's really looking forward to seeing you in June, seeing you all in
Okay.
June.
John's a
Oh,
big
that's nice to
part
hear.
of our drama community. And I want to thank you both, Kimberly Kalaya and Nick DeSimone, for joining us here. I really enjoyed talking with you both. And
What a
we look
pleasure.
forward to reading
Thank
to
you.
the play. Yeah, your plays.
Thank you for having us, and it was a lot of fun, and it was a pleasure doing it with Kimberly.
Yeah, it was really nice meeting you, Nick. And I'm so thrilled that you guys took the time to let us talk like this, and to thanks to everyone who showed up and watched this. I hope they'll.
Yeah, thank you. No,
Thanks
that's great.
also to Valerie Eastburn, Chair of the Emerging Playwrights Competition and Drama at Phillips Mill Community Association. She helped us organize this Art Talk. Thank you to our new Art Talk team member, David Hewitt. We're delighted to have you on board, David. And as always, thank you to Jen McHugh for producing this program. And a sincere thank you to the members of Phillips Mill Community Association who make this program possible. Next up on January 24th, we'll be talking with Kelly Sullivan, an artist who also conducts finger smears. That's what I said, finger smears, which is, she conducts a group of people who paint on large canvases, some of them up to 18 feet. And she's renovating the Strand Theater in Lambertsville, New Jersey, into a new art space for our area. I'm Laura Womack. Good night, and thank you very much for coming.